Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi still. It is Wednesday, March 22nd. And as of right now, which is 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, there has still yet to be an indictment for Donald Trump in his hush money payments for former porn star Stormy Daniels. And even if there is today, Mueller, she wrote on Twitter, had an interesting point, which I just want to read for you all. Basically, she said, even if there was an indictment for today, basically, we would have to find out from Trump. So basically, she wrote that if Trump is indicted today, will be under seal. We won't know about it unless Trump or his lawyers tell the public. The indictment remains under seal until arraignment, which is when Donald agrees to turn himself in for arrest. There's no deadline for that. So even if there is an indictment, we might not see it unless Trump and his lawyers announce it. So that's an important caveat to note. But like we said yesterday, I was with Lawrence O'Donnell. In terms of the timeline, it'll either be Wednesday or next Monday that we see an indictment, because that's when the grand jury convenes and then votes. So we'll see. There's also rumors that there might be another witness today. Who knows? But as of right now, what we saw on Monday was Bob Costello testify. He was sent by the Trump lawyers to testify against Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, basically Michael Costello or Robert Costello testified for about 2.5 hours. And Michael Cohen was there the entire time. And I think it's good news for all of us that Michael Cohen was not called in as a rebuttal witness. So maybe that suggests that what Robert Costello said was just so kind of just not credible, and the grand jury didn't believe him. So Michael Cohen has not yet been asked to give a rebuttal testimony, which I think is good news for the Michael Cohen side, for the anti-Trump side. But in terms of what we're seeing right now, I think we're just seeing this process play out. There might be another witness today. And if there is, maybe we'll get an indictment by the end of today. But today would be the earliest time. And like Mueller, she wrote, said, it's important for all of us to note that if we don't hear anything, there is a possibility that maybe Trump and his lawyers have not said anything yet about the indictment. But we'll all be watching that very closely. I know this New York case is going to be really, really consequential. And one of the things I talk a lot about with my other co-host, Jill Wine-Banks of iGen Politics, is there's a lot of talk about how, this is just a low-level offense and we shouldn't indict him because this is low level. Well, that's the problem. We have to make sure that we indict people for every offense that they commit, because just because he's the former president doesn't mean he gets to get away with this type of crime. If no one is above the rule of law, and that's what keeps our democracy up and running. I mean, that is what makes democracy whole, is that no one above the law is no one is above the law. And unlike aristocracies, there is no king. No one is a king. No one is above the rule of law, and that includes Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump and his lawyers know that very clearly now, based off of what we're seeing on Truth Social with all of his caps statements. I mean, this is someone who I think is really scared about his future, because this is someone who has, for his entire 75-plus year life, has basically evaded accountability. He has broken laws, but he's evaded accountability. Somehow the legal system has not caught up to him. But I think now you're starting to see that. And yesterday, there was some additional interesting news and good news, which is that Donald Trump lost his last bid to keep evidence out of the E. Jean Carroll rape trial against him. As we all know, E. Jean Carroll is suing Donald Trump because of rape. And yesterday, basically, a federal judge ruled that witnesses will be allowed to testify, and that the things that Trump said about E. Jean Carroll and about women in 2005 can be played for a grand jury as additional testimony for this kind of pattern of Donald Trump saying damaging things about women, sexist, misogynistic remarks. And it's no different for E. Jean Carroll. So I think that pattern is going to be really important to set up. And I think using that as evidence is going to be really important for the E. Jean Carroll side. And also the judge said that he will allow testimony from 2 people who worked at that department store where E. Jean Carroll was at the time of the alleged rape to testify. So initially, Trump's lawyers said, no, we don't want this to happen. But that judge ruled that 2 people can testify in that in that trial who worked with E. Jean Carroll at that store. So it's good news out of, in that case. In that case is, yet another moment of accountability. And we should all be thanking E. Jean Carroll, the amazing E. Jean Carroll, for bringing this case, for having the courage, for having the, just the bravery to do that is really extraordinary. So thank you, Ej and Carol, and we hope that these next few months aren't too crazy for you. But that's really good news. And some other interesting news regarding the special counsel investigation. Yesterday, there was some really interesting news regarding the special counsel investigation. Basically, ABC News reported that a judge ruled that special counsel Jack Smith has seen enough evidence to basically hold Donald Trump accountable for even more crimes because he intentionally misled his lawyers in the Mar-a-Lago documents investigation. As we all know, there were multiple times when Christina Bobbs signed a statement even though she knew it was false. There were other lawyers who basically fabricated statements just to kind of fit around Donald Trump's narrative. And yesterday, a judge ruled that there is enough evidence for Jack Smith to conclude that Donald Trump intentionally, deliberately, knowingly knew what he was telling lawyers were lies, but he still kind of told them. And that, is very reminiscent of what Fox News did in 2020, where they knew what they were telling their audience was a lie, but yet they kept on saying it. Same with Donald Trump with his lawyers. And so that might be an additional crime according to this new reporting. And yesterday, here's the exact quote from ABC. It said, quote, prosecutors in the special counsel's office have presented compelling preliminary evidence that former President Donald Trump knowingly and deliberately misled his own attorneys about his retention of classified materials after leaving office. So this is someone who, again, he knows what he's doing. He is misleading his lawyers. And why should we take his word for January 6th, right? He claims that, no one knew about it. Well, clearly people did. And clearly he knew it was an insurrection. So, it's just another moment where we can't trust anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. Even this week, he wasn't right about Tuesday being the indictment day. So just don't trust anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. Whatever comes out of his mouth is a lie or a fabrication, probably. And I just remember what Adam Schiff said during that last impeachment, which is that this man will never learn. You can try all you want, but this man is a national security threat. He will never learn, and right matters little to him. And it's so true. And I'm reminded of those words. I'm reminded of what Colonel Vindman said during that first impeachment, which is that, right still matters here. That's why we have to hold Donald Trump accountable. We have to prove that our rule of law, that our democracy are intact. And part of that is holding Donald Trump accountable. And so I think we really have to make sure that happens. And there's, I mentioned what's happening in Manhattan. I mentioned what's happening in Ej and Carol. I mentioned what's happening in the Jack Smith office. And the last thing I want to mention before I get into some other news of the day is yesterday, Ari Melber did a phenomenal job grilling Trump's lawyer in Georgia, Drew Finling. It was one of those masterful moments. And obviously last week he grilled Joe Tacopina. I don't know how many of you saw it, but basically he presented a paper showing the receipts, and Joe Tacopina literally lunged forward and tried to grab that piece of paper out of his hand, which is, another indication that this person doesn't want the facts to come out, is scared of the truth, knows what he's doing. And when presented with the truth, he doesn't have any defense because that's the truth. That's the facts. Those are the receipts. Yesterday, it was the same thing with Drew Finling. Although he wasn't there in person, I suspect if he was there in person, it would have been the same situation where Drew Finling couldn't, confront the facts. Yesterday, Ari Melber did a really good job just kind of pointing him out and exposing him for all of his false and misleading statements. And yesterday, there was just this really telling exchange, which is, Ari Melber asked, what did he mean when he said find? And as we can all guess, find 11,870 votes in Georgia. The Trump attorney said he's completely innocent. And then Ari Melber said when he said find votes that they don't exist after certification, he continued, with all rambling. And he couldn't even admit that the 2020 election in Georgia, Joe Biden won. Yesterday, Ari Melber pressed him multiple times. Can you just answer yes or no question whether or not Trump lost the 2020 election? And basically Drew Finling said something effective, well, that doesn't matter, or I know my client is going to win this case. He just kept on, again, those 3 Ds is kind of how those Republicans operate. It's divert, deflect, and really kind of disengage from the argument. So he's diverting from the argument, he's distracting, he's disengaging, he's diverting from what's actually mattering at hand. And so that lawyer was just kind of a true embarrassment. And Ari Melber said at the beginning of the show, this is this is a lawyer who actually has a pretty good track record. He actually is a pretty good lawyer if you just look at kind of how many cases he's won. But now that he's supporting Donald Trump, his reputation is totally ruined. I mean, no one can watch that interview and say, I want that man to represent me in my case. But yet, he's still doing this. And it just reminds me of, what happens when you're around someone who holds power. Same thing with Rudy Giuliani. He was someone who once, I'm not saying he's perfect, but he was America's mayor once. And we saw just the disintegration of values, the disintegration of morals once he started becoming with Donald Trump. And same with basically every other Republican close into Trump's circle. None of them really have any sense of backbone anymore. And it's just kind of what Donald Trump does to the psyche, does to the body. He was able to manipulate people, and people fall for it. And someone like Drew Findling, who prosecuted some really high profile cases, can't even answer a basic yes or no question about the results of the Georgia election, falling into Joe Biden's favor and Donald Trump losing it. It's just sad, but it's also pathetic, and kind of speaks to just this kind of broader kind of culture of what happens when you're around people who hold positions of power, people who can have a lot of money, have a lot of wealth, have a lot of resources. Something like this happens. And so I just want to say bravo to Ari Melber for holding him accountable. And I tweeted this yesterday, but if you are a Trump lawyer or someone who is a part of that MAGA crowd and you agree to go on Ari Melber's show, just know that he's going to have the facts, and he will push back on lies. He will push back on nonsense. He will hold you accountable. And so for all of those Trump lawyers, I don't know what in the first place thought there would be a good idea to go on Ari Melber's show when they don't even know the facts. But this I think should be a strong message to anyone out there in the Trump world, that when you do go on Ari Melber's show, you will be held accountable. Just some other things before I get into a couple of your questions for the day. And again, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but if you have any questions for me, be sure to ask them in the chat box. I'll get to as many as I possibly can for today. The next thing I want to get into is Rhonda Santos actually started attacking Donald Trump and his character, presumably because he might want to get into the 2024 re-election campaign or election campaign. And there's been a lot of, as we know, Rhonda Santos is someone who really kind of has his moments of loving Donald Trump. But yesterday he told the New York Post, quote, I think he got way too big for his britches. And I think he did a lot of damage. And he said, this was to Piers Morgan, and he said, it's not important for me to be fighting with people on social media. And then he said, the way we run government, I think, is no daily drama, which seems to be, a dig at Trump. And about the conduct of a leader, he said, you really want to look to people like our founding fathers. It's not saying that you don't ever make a mistake in your personal life, but I think, what type of character are you bringing? Which I thought was really interesting. And he said, I placed loyalty to the cause over loyalty to me. I had no desire to be flattered about, this was about a new book that apparently is being written. And so basically, he's coming out, I think, subtly after Donald Trump. But again, this is someone who isn't, sane. This is someone who might present a veneer of credibility and a veneer of competence, but this is someone who can't be trusted. Ron DeSantis is a threat to democracy. There are so many bills in Florida; it will be too long for me to list, but there are serious dangers to the functioning of our democracy. And if he becomes president, that's the scariest part. He actually does have a chance to become president if Donald Trump is indicted. If Donald Trump no longer runs, Ron DeSantis will be the next person. And what happens in Florida can happen on a national level. And so it's up to all of us to really realize the threat that he poses in Florida, and then that can trickle across the country once he becomes president, because he knows what he's doing. This is a Yale grad, this is a Harvard grad, this is someone who has been in elite institutions, who has the education, and he knows what he's doing. And that's the most kind of just dark and disturbing elements of this, is that he might be coming after Donald Trump, but he at the core of his bones believes that what he's doing in Florida is good. And that's the most terrifying thing, which is that if he believes what he's doing in Florida is good, he's going to try to do that across the country. He's going to try to basically attack students, attack teachers, make it harder for anyone to criticize him. It's just really scary stuff. And I hope all of us pay attention to it. One other thing before I answer your questions is there was a really special moment yesterday at the White House, and this is a more of a lighthearted note, but Mindy Kaling, Bruce Springsteen, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who are all just great, actors, singers, people in the entertainment world. They were awarded with the National Medal of Arts. This was a delayed ceremony, but yesterday was the first time that they all came together at the White House in the East Room, and President Biden delivered these medals, and it was just a special moment to see. Arts are one of those few things that can still keep us together. Music, movies, all of those things are what can keep us together and what unites us more than anything else. And so to see them honored yesterday was really, really special. And here are some other people who were awarded yesterday. It was Judith Francisca Baca, Jose Feliciano, Mindy Kaling, Gladys Knight, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Antonia Martorell Cardona, Joan Shigakawa, who's a producer and arts administrator, Bruce Springsteen, Vera Wang, who is a designer, the Billie Holiday Theater, and the International Association of Blacks in Dance, and then some other people who I'm sure maybe all of you have heard of, Tara Westover, a writer, Amy Tan, a writer, Colson Whitehead, Ann Patchett, Brian Stevenson, Earl Lewis, Walter Isaacson, Richard Blanco, just a number of really amazing people yesterday just awarded for the work that they do for bringing us together and giving us things to read, things to listen to, things to see on the TV screen. So just one of those moments where we can all when at the end of the day we can all fall back on the arts, we can all fall back on literature. That's what keeps us together. And so it was a special moment to see everyone there at the East Room, who has really, like the White House said, or like the medal is intended for, whose work has really deepened our nation's understandings of humanities and broadened our citizens' engagement with history, literature, language, philosophy, and other humanities subjects. So great moment from that. I have time for a couple of questions, and we got some great questions submitted. Just a couple of things, which is, let's see. Okay, from Terry in Boston, he asks, from Stanford to UC Davis, hard right speakers are getting shouted down. Good trend, or do we need more debate? I'm a big proponent of the First Amendment. I think the First Amendment is really important in a functioning democracy. I have seen what happens in Stanford. So basically what happened was there was a judge that came in. His views were really questionable. And a bunch of people on the the Democratic side started protesting. They went to the event and they basically made a really loud scene. The judge responded not as kindly as he should have, but it was a moment where tensions were high and the students basically tried shouting him down. They brought really big signs, which I think is fine. But I think the biggest thing that people are kind of worried about on the right, at least, are that these students were really loud about their protests. They had disrupted the event. Some of the questions they asked were totally inappropriate of a judge. I think it's a tricky subject because I think protest is totally fine. I think to be able to protest with people with whom you disagree is fine, but to shout down the event is something different, I think. And I think that for anyone, knowing how to talk civilly, knowing how to have civil disagreement, knowing how to have dialogue, I think is really important. And especially at college campuses where you should be challenged on your viewpoints, where you should have those civil conversations about different viewpoints. That's what I think is most concerning, is that across the country, I think there is this culture of a suppression of free speech. Even the other week at Stanford, there was this case that went kind of national, which is that for one of the classes, they required students to read Mein Kampf from Hitler. The student went to the library, checked out Mein Kampf, which had, I think, a copy or two copies of Mein Kampf, and he was reading it on the lawn. And basically, one student took a picture of him on Snapchat. He posted the picture on Snapchat. Stanford found out about it, and they basically referred him to the disciplinary committee and wanted him to go on academic probation because he was reading Mein Kampf. Mind you, this was for a class. It was in the library. He had every right to read it if he wanted to read it, but the student took a Snapchat of him reading it, sent it to the administrators, and I think he went on some sort of academic probation, or he has to do some sort of training. But I think we have to be able to talk to people again. And I think this is both sides. I think especially on the right, where I think just being able to teach people how to have those civil conversations, how to talk to people with whom you disagree is a skill that we all need to have, especially as college students, being able to go into classrooms, have differing opinions, and being able to respect people, even though they might have different viewpoints from us. That's what makes democracy so special, is that we're all able to come together and actually have those conversations. So I think, the more we can do that, the better it'll be for democracy. But in terms of hard right speakers getting shut down, I'm not opposed to protesting, but I think, to then actually take it a step forward and to disrupt the event, I think is more dangerous than we might think. So, whether or not it's a good trend, probably not. I don't think there's enough for me to say that yet, but I do think we need more just good faith debate in general. So thank you, Terry, for your question. Maybe let's do one other thing. And I've gotten a lot of questions from about students and Gen Zers. And Kristen from Chicago asked a really interesting question, which is, would you recommend college to everyone? Costs are exploding, but education is still important. What do we do? Great question, Kristen. And this is something that I think about a lot because I'm here in LA. I'm at UCLA right now. And one of the things about UCLA that I really admire is that a lot of students here are transfer students. And I don't think that is something that, at least where I come from, Chicago, there's enough emphasis on, which is that there's a choice in education. There is vocational school. There are community colleges. There are, local colleges that you can attend. There are state universities you can attend. At least where I came from, a lot of the rhetoric was, you have to go to a really good school. It's either a four-year institution or bust. You either have to go to a four-year institution or you can't, make a living. And I think that's just a false narrative. A lot of people, and I think it really depends on your situation. If you can afford to go to a four-year institution, by all means, go to a four-year institution. I think that's really special. But if you can't afford it, there are some other really good avenues. Maybe you can work and do community college at the same time. Maybe you can stay, in your community and then transfer. I think those are all options. I think to give students those options, I think is really important. But in terms of recommending college, I think college is a great experience. I think especially, depending on what type of college you like, whether or not it's a small college, whether or not it's a big college, there's a lot of factors. And I know this is, right now, as I'm talking, it's a time for college admissions. I know UCLA just released its 2027 admissions. A lot of my friends that I know back at home who are in high school, they have gotten their admissions. So first of all, congratulations to all of you for getting your admissions. I know it's stressful, but hopefully you have a home. And now the decision is just, where you go. And no matter where you go, truly, you will be happy. You will find a home. You will enjoy it. You will really enjoy your experience. And I think just for anyone considering college, at the end of the day, what makes college special isn't what you learn. You might, learn some new things, but it's the people you meet. It's the students you meet. It's those connections that you build. It's learning from different people, having those people who you can rely on, your peers. That's who's going to make the difference, not the research or the tenure of the faculty at your university. I strongly believe that what's most important in college are the people who you meet, those new experiences. And so for anyone thinking about college, I highly recommend it. But just know that if you can't afford college, there are other options too. You can start off at a community college. You can start off at a vocational school, transfer, or stay at the vocational school. There are other really good options. I know tuition is really high, but I think at the end of the day, you can find other alternatives. And I think that's something that we should all be pushing, is giving students that awareness of the choices that are out there for colleges. So for anyone who is deciding on a college, I wish you the best of luck. For any parents, I just know that whatever college they choose, it'll be great for them. Let them, and you don't have to have a major. I think that's one of the other things about college that people get wrong. I could talk about colleges all day long and advice for students, but just in terms of major, there is no pressure to choose a major your first year. Explore, use college as that exploring opportunity. Find the thing that you love. You don't have to declare it your first year. Just kind of take classes. There are some really interesting classes no matter where you go. Take those classes, get interested, join clubs, find what you're truly passionate about, and then choose a major. But you don't have to feel pressure about choosing a major your first year. So again, best of luck. Congratulations on getting in. And no matter where you go, you will end up being happy. If you can't afford it, there are other avenues. You can still transfer into your dream school if you want to, and spend those first couple of years working, spend those first couple of years at a school where you can afford it. All of those are great options. So best of luck. And thank you everyone for the questions. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this Ask Me Anything series and listening to me talk about some of the news of the day. We have some exciting guests for the rest of this week. It's Wednesday today, but tomorrow is Thursday, obviously, I will be back for another episode with State Senator Malcolm Kenyatta from Pennsylvania. He is a rising star in the Democratic Party. He's great. He is on fire. We'll talk about his Senate time and why Democrats need to focus on down ballot races. And then on Friday, we're going to be joined by Kimberly Atkins-Storr, who I'm sure all of you have listened to on #Sisters-in-Law, which is another podcast that Politicon produces with some great MSNBC political analysts, Barbara Quaid, Jill Wine-Banks, and Joyce Vance. We'll be joined by Kimberly Atkins-Storr on Friday to talk about some of the news and political and legal news of the week. So join us then. It'll be tomorrow and Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching this episode of On the Move, and hopefully you like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow.